Well, hello, hello, hello. How's it going? I just wanted to share some cool things that have happened over the last week. A couple of, um, well, let's see. I guess I'll start with some appraisals. So, over the last couple of months, as we've been refinancing some of our past clients, I found it really interesting to see two of them who bought, one bought about 7, 8 months ago, the other one bought about a year ago. And when we got our appraisals back with them, we literally had the exact, so in the refinance, we had to do an appraisal. And when I got those back, both of them, the values went up, even though it was a very short time that they owned the home. But it was interesting because in both cases, their exact same appraiser who appraised their property the first time appraised the property a second time, which is pretty crazy, frankly. But I found it super interesting for a like a case study because you probably hear all about home prices going up, and you probably see news reports and things. And frankly, most of those are not specific case studies, but just kind of general consensus of the median sales price, for example. But these two are very case specific, right? And so, and both of them are in Salt Lake County. So if it's somewhere else that you're paying attention, then, you know, it's just, anecdotally, I guess these will be useful. And so I wanted to start with that. And then I wanted to talk about I wanted to actually talk about how much buying power somebody has. I was going to actually show you my worksheet that we do. I'll put 80,000, 100,000, and maybe 200,000 incomes in there and show you what kind of buying power that gets here in Utah. And then I wanted to finish with the results of an annual review I did with a customer last week. It was a really interesting conversation, and I think you'll find it interesting too. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into the appraisals. It's not very long, but I find it really interesting, the values. And so I'm going to start with these. And let's see, we started in, so November of 2024, right? So it's just over a year ago. We closed with a purchase price of 515,000. And then when we did the refinance in January, the new value, again, from the exact same appraiser, right? So not even another appraiser who would have a different type of opinion. This is the exact same appraiser, gives us a value of 526,000. So from 515 to 526, so roughly $11,000. And that's in almost exactly just a year. And so I find that really, really interesting. So what is that? 11,000 over a 515,000 price. So 2% a year. And if you look at the news, that's literally exactly what they've been reporting. It's about 2%. And so I found that pretty cool. Thought you might enjoy that. The other one was more recent than that. And by the way, that was actually in American Fork, not in Salt Lake County, sorry. And then the other one, and of course, I did not save it in my phone like I did this one, so that's pretty dumb. But that one, it was, I'm going to say it was a $5,000 increase, and it was exactly the same appraiser yet again. Not the same appraiser as this one, just the same as his purchase. And he gained, so he purchased and closed in, it was either July or May, and then closed again just barely, so January, February. And so roughly 7, 8 months that he owned the home, and his home value actually went up about $5,000. And so not huge, of course, but again, that was roughly 1.5% climb in his purchase price. Over the fall and winter, mind you, spring buying season tends to be where most of our appreciation will happen, spring and summer. But in this case, his that little bit of appreciation we see actually happened in the summer, fall, winter time frame. So thought it was pretty cool. So anyway, that's the first point I wanted to cover, and thought you guys would find that interesting. Um, so the next thing I wanted to cover was this worksheet, and so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we will start. Well, I guess I better share my screen before I go there. Do 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 do. How many Zoom meetings do you find yourself in each week, and how much time do you think you spend in your life waiting for the person running the Zoom to share their screen? I don't know. Sometimes I feel like a lot. All right, let's go ahead and pull this up. And in theory, you can now see my screen, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to start with, let's actually start with 80,000. So let's do 80. divided by 12. Now I'm going to start right here. So 80,000 bucks, what's this going to buy? We're going to get there. Now you're looking at my worksheet that I use to help people get pre-approved. We might change this for little clips that we'll break out. And so that if you're watching just a short little clip, you want to get into the long form to be able to see all the details. But I have no debt in here whatsoever, and I'm going to show you something. I'm going to kind of go back and forth with that in a second. But when you have no debt, FHA will let you go to roughly a 47% debt to income ratio for your house. And conventional will usually cap you out right around 43%. All of this is assuming a strong credit score, maybe a 750 or something like that. If you're down around a 650, you might have a hard time. First off, we probably won't go conventional. We'll probably go FHA, assuming you don't qualify for VA or USDA. But with FHA, they may even pull back your debt to income ratio a little bit. But I want to start with this. So you'll see right here, we have a $3,100 house payment FHA would be comfortable with you having. So if you're making 80,000 a year, that's about 66, 67 a month. They're happy with, they're comfortable with you having about a $3,100 house payment. So probably a little bit more than you were expecting, and most people aren't very comfortable with a $3,100 house payment. But whatever. Anyway, so a 2,800 for conventional, that's about what they're comfortable getting you. And so let's go ahead and take a look for a second on buying power. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to change a couple numbers. Actually, no, I'm going to do that right now. So I told you FHA is cool going to a 47%. But if you have debt, and let's just start with 500 bucks a month. And then let's go back to 55. So I want you to pay attention to this. So FHA with no debt, they're comfortable with you having a $3,133 house payment. If you have $500 a month of debt, they're comfortable with you having roughly the same house payment. Go figure. So they're comfortable, FHA is comfortable with somebody buying a house with $500 additional debt and still giving them the exact same priced house. And so that's point number one I thought would be useful for this video would be just letting people know. And if you already own a home, you're watching this with me, hey, thanks for hanging out with me. Hey, thanks for spending your life with me. And I don't know why you would. Maybe you like the sound of my voice. Just kidding. It sounds good when I'm in the shower and singing, but anyway, as far as this kind of stuff goes, if you already own a home, keep these thoughts in mind and share these points with whoever that doesn't own a home or somebody that's thinking about moving, because that's who's going to care the most about this kind of stuff, and probably all the people that are actually tuning in. But if you're hanging out with me all the same, I appreciate you. I feel you. I'm glad you're with me. But I just wanted to point that out, 500 bucks a month, and you're really not going to qualify for any less house, meaning that sometimes people get a little over ambitious and they want to go pay off all their debts before they call me up and buy their first house. And frankly, that's usually a mistake. I get why you're doing it, and frankly, I feel the exact same way. However, maybe look more for like stability, like how comfortable are you managing those debts versus needing to get them paid off. Because remember, when you come to me and you have a down payment, you're going to get a better deal than if you come to me and you need down payment. And we do have down payment assistance, so don't not come to me if you don't have one. But just recognize that if you're paying all your money towards getting out of debt, though that may seem logical on the surface, let's have that conversation. Let me show you a few other things that I'm not going to cover in this video. But for the sake of the continuation of this video, I am going to go back to no debt, and I'm going to go back to, there we go. So 3133 and 2867. Let's see what kind of buying power that is for 80,000 bucks a year in Utah. So first and foremost, I just want to point out that we have USDA and VA who are 100% down or 100% finance loans. They don't require a down payment at all. And I'm not going to highlight those two because they're relatively few. Veteran, you have to be a veteran U.S. military or buying somewhere out in the sticks in order to qualify for those two programs. Also, you'll see I've got, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't know. What is this? 7, 8, 9 programs. This is just some of our down payment assistance programs. But these are some of our very, very different programs. We also have Utah Housing sitting in here. Dynamo is very different than Utah Housing and one of my favorites. You'll notice the rates look a little higher. Anyway, this is not a down payment assistance video, so I'm actually going to put all this away for the sake of our discussion here. And I'm just going to keep FHA and conventional 5% down. So I'm going to go ahead and put away all the rest of these that I normally would talk about with home buyers that we're talking to. So just go ahead and ignore all the rest of these because, well, yeah, let's ignore those for the moment. And then FHA, we're probably, I don't know, honestly, probably lower than 5.25. Let's go with 5.25 for a moment. And conventional, let's just go with 5.99. It's just a little bit under 6%. But you'll notice I don't really have any lender fees in this line. My closing costs for this is currently a $600,000 house, which 80,000 is not going to get you that high. So let's start with 450 and go from there. But you'll notice the closing cost in that's pretty low. So I'm just going to go with kind of a lower closing cost option. This is half of this is just your homeowner's insurance, property taxes, your new prepaids and escrows, and then some of the third-party fees. But if you were going FHA, you would be able to do about 473,000. If you were going conventional, you'd be able to go to about 430,000. So there is the buying power that you would be able to do if you were doing, if you made about 80,000 a year and had no debt, or maybe 500 bucks in debt. If you had 500 a month in total debt, 430 to 470, that would be roughly your buying power. Some of those price points in Salt Lake County and Utah County are townhomes. They might have HOAs and stuff in them, so that might change things a little bit. Usually about 100 bucks a month in an HOA is probably going to be about 10,000 on your price, give or take. Okay, so let's go take a look and see what 100,000 does now that we've kind of done that. So 100, not 110. We'll divide that by 12, so 83.33 a month. 3,900 a month. So adding 20,000 bucks a year, you now can borrow an additional $800 a month. Whew. And about 700 a month on conventional. So what's the buying power for that? You're now up to the high 500s and maybe mid 500s if you're conventional. So check that out. So let's go ahead and put 575 in there just to see. And yeah, high 500s, almost 600,000 if you're going FHA and you make 100,000 bucks a year. Now this is a big deal because this is actually an interesting point. When you get over 550, 575, that's where you start to find these homes that oftentimes have mother-in-law apartments. And sometimes with them, we can actually count additional income, which then would then increase your buying power even more. So keep that in mind. And the flip-flop would go true too, right? Like if you're making 80,000 a year and we can count 20,000 a year in rent, we might be able to help you get into a house that's actually not 450 or 470, but 590. So now FHA has different rules than conventional, and conventional has a variation of rules on whether or not we can count those rents. So if that's you and you're listening to this and you're like, hey, I want to check into that, I've made some other videos, but feel free to just comment or reach out to us, direct message us, whatever. Okay, now let's have some fun and let's put 200,000 up here and see what that does. When somebody calls me up there making 200 plus, I usually start to get pretty loose on my initial pre-qualification because usually that opens up the door quite a bit. You could see what happened with just 20 grand. What does another 100 grand do? So this one, they're comfortable potentially getting you a $7,800 house payment or 71 conventional. Now this isn't going to hold exactly true because FHA can only go to 600,000 or 630,000 in Utah County. Salt Lake County, 630 grand in Utah. I'm going to say it twice, guys. Anyway, a little over 600 grand in both Utah and Salt Lake counties, and then it varies all over the rest of the state. So what is it? What's the buying power? Well, according to this number, you could buy a $1.1 million house with an FHA loan. But like I said, they top out around 600 grand or so. So if you're making that much money, it's going to we're not going to be able to give you an FHA loan for it mostly. Conventional on the flip side, it goes up to 830,000. And so you're definitely going to be able to hit that and then some if you were going to go conventional and you make 200 grand a year. Now, if you want to exceed that 830, we can do that, but that's another conversation in and of itself as well. So hopefully that you find that helpful and insightful. Feel free to share little snippets of this with your friends or whoever you know that's thinking about moving. And I'm going to go ahead and move on now to my third and final topic, a conversation I had last week with one of my clients who I'm doing an annual review. They bought a couple years back, and they were selling a home in California as they moved here. They already owned another home here. And anyway, anybody that's listened or watched any of my videos, you know that I teach principle or strategy. What do you want to call it? A culture almost of mortgage planning, which has a lot of different facets to it. But as mortgage planning, it basically is a faster, safer way for getting your house paid off that does not involve you paying any extra to your house ever. Um, and so a couple of obvious indicators when you're listening to people talk about, what they're doing with their mortgages is if they say something about, oh, we're paying extra on our mortgage, know that inside I'm going to cringe just a little bit because that means they're not listening. So I had this conversation with her and I wanted to share this. If you're familiar with Utah here, so I live in Salt Lake County, and if I wanted to drive to Santaquin, I've got essentially two routes that I could take to Santaquin. Santaquin's a beautiful area. It's been growing like crazy. It's maybe an hour, something like that from my house. So if I want to go there, I've got basically two routes. I can take Redwood Road or I can take I-15. Now, Redwood Road will make it to Santaquin, but it's going to take me a fat minute. There's a lot of stoplights, there's traffic, there's just twists and turns. I've got to do a 90-degree turn, kind of at the end of Redwood to get over to Santaquin. And then I-15, of course, it's also got a couple of 90-degree turns, I guess. But which one's going to get us there faster? And if I told you that I was just more comfortable on Redwood Road, what would you tell me? And I want to throw this out because just because someone's more comfortable with something doesn't mean it's the better option. What I would potentially tell somebody is, because what do you have to do if you drive I-15? You got to go 70 miles an hour or something close to that, right? And frankly, there's a lot of new drivers that are scared by that and they're just uncomfortable with that. Of course, then there's other drivers that are very comfortable with that. Uh, I might relate more to that side. But what would you tell somebody who's uncomfortable driving 70 miles an hour? Maybe learn to get comfortable, maybe practice enough to get to that. I don't know. Frankly, if they're driving a 4 or 5 thousand pound vehicle, maybe I'd encourage them to just stay on Redwood Road. But in the world of mortgages, this is the point I wanted her to understand. So this particular client already had enough money to pay her house off free and clear. But she was uncomfortable putting that money into the house because it would tap her out. She'd have nothing left over at that point. But she was comfortable putting $1,000 a month extra into her mortgage payment. And and at the very same time that she's telling me she's repaying her mortgage more rapidly, she repeated that, I don't know, a dozen times during the conversation how much they needed their tax benefits from that mortgage. Now, if you don't know this, if you're paying a 6.5% interest rate and you're throwing an extra $1,000 a month against that, you are reducing your tax benefits in a pretty significant fashion. If you look at a 15-year mortgage, for example, versus a 30-year mortgage, the 15-year tax benefits are very muted. And that's because of all the extra principal payments. You just pay a lot less interest on that kind of deal. Now, a lot of people think that's a good thing, paying less interest, and that's a good thing if you're a consumer. But walk down the road of a business owner with me for 1 second. To help make a lot of the points of mortgages, I'll use business owners. So if you're thinking about building a business, and let's say you have to go into debt $1 million in order to do that, and let's say that $1 million is going to cost you $20,000 a month in debt, but it will generate $30,000 a month of income, meaning that yes, you'll be in debt $1 million, but you're going to make $10,000 a month. First off, Is that a good deal? Would you think that's a good choice to go in debt $1 million? You're owing $20,000 a month, but you're bringing home 10,000, 20,000 a month to the bank, but you're keeping 10,000 after that. Is that a good deal? And this is where a business owner is going to say, actually, what is it? How can I go into debt $5 million, and that $5 million, I'll have $50,000 a month of income, right? So that's the perspective. You got to recognize that sometimes debt isn't your enemy. Sometimes debt is your friend. So in her case, what I was trying to help her recognize is if she stopped paying anything extra into the mortgage at all, she would maintain her tax benefits that she was very fond of. They're making good money for the time being, and they're paying a lot in taxes, so they need the tax benefits. But if she was to take that same $1,000 a month and put it in another account, which anybody that's been watching my clips or videos recently knows I've been talking a lot about this for the last few weeks. Um, if she's, again, 6.5% interest, high income, so her net interest rate's probably under 5%. The amortization of it, or excuse me, the tax savings is eating away at how much she's actually paying. So she's probably under 5%. If she's putting that same $1,000 a month away in just, I don't know, a 401k, an IRA, just something with a mutual fund in it, even in most cases, she's going to average out more than 7% growth on that money, and a 7% compounded growth at that, where over here she's a 5% or less simple interest rate. That spread is what's going to get her faster to that day where she can pay the mortgage off in full. Furthermore, that spread, this is liquid money. This is not. Every $1,000 she puts into the house, the balance goes down, yes. Her home equity goes up, yes. But home equity is, you don't have an ATM card to your home equity. And if things get not very good at work, and maybe you get laid off or you get fired or something like that, you're going to find that this money is extremely illiquid. I've had clients call me up and they're like, hey, Josh, I lost my job. I need to get access to my home equity. And if you guys don't know this, we're pretty intent on people making money in order to lend them money. I do have some programs and I have been able to rescue people in that situation a few times, but it's kind of brutal, to be honest. And I feel a little bit bad doing it, but gave them the equity that they needed, I guess. So this is the perspective that I was trying to help her recognize. And she did. She started to understand it better. But at the end of the day, it came down to the fact that she was just more comfortable driving down Redwood Road. And what can I tell her, right? She's comfortable. She was uncomfortable putting money in mutual funds. She was uncomfortable with a lot of those kinds of accounts. How do you get comfortable with stuff like that? Well, you take the time to actually study it and do some mock investing even and check it and just explore it, but don't run away from it. Don't never go there, right? Maybe drive down I-15 with a friend who's comfortable driving. Maybe look at some traffic pictures. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe drive along some of the frontage roads and check it out. See what you think. Um, Maybe just take one little section, right, from one entrance to one exit and see how you do and stay far right the whole time. But same kind of thing. She agreed to meet with me again a couple weeks later as she continued to try to marinate herself in these new philosophies, but it would benefit her for her taxes, which she cited as a very high priority for her. And it would cause her money to stay much more liquid. And it's not changing her monthly payments any. What it's doing is it's going to save the amount of interest she spends long term on this mortgage, but it's also going to cost her the gains that she would have had if she had invested it along the way. Again, 7% versus 5%, she's going to have more liquid money long term at the ready. And if anything happens, and they're seniors, right? Their health is not amazing. Well, I mean, it's good now, but she's at an age bracket that she should be concerned and aware, right? And so, like, that's why her liquid cash was really important to her, but she needs to keep that in mind as well for the money she's burying into the mortgage. So, anyway, faster, safer way to pay off your house. Um, Consider learning how to drive on I-15 to get to Santaquin versus Redwood Road. That was kind of the sum total of our conversation. Thought you might enjoy that kind of walkthrough a little bit. And if not, then hope you didn't watch all of this. But if you know anybody else that would appreciate hearing this kind of stuff, please share this with them. I think I like to hear my own voice, and so thank goodness YouTube will record and not judge me. But if you enjoyed it as well, then please, let us know, comment, share. If you have questions or disagreements or further ideas and stuff, please weigh in. We'd love to see your comments. And I mean, it's just me. This isn't some ginormous influencer or whatever with thousands of comments or whatever. We just love to interact with you and help both of us grow along the way of our understanding. And we'll talk to you later. So have a great day.